Hi there, this is Andrea Mowry of Drea Renee Knits, and today I'm going to show you how to Kitchener stitch off of one needle instead of having to separate your stitches onto two needles. And this is also happens to be how I'm going to bind off this double knitted belt. It would also be really similar to how you'd finish off a tubular bind off. So my first stitch here is going to be my knit stitch. And to get started, we want to actually insert our tapestry needle, which we have the tail of our yarn on. Typically, you want to cut your yarn so it's at least 3 times the length of what you're going to Kitchener. So this first stitch, I'm going to insert my tapestry needle purlwise. And then for the second stitch, I actually am going to take my tapestry needle in between the 2 stitches, and I'm going to insert it knitwise as though I was knitting into the second stitch. Now I'm going to come back to my first stitch, which I am going to insert my needle knitwise, and I can actually slide it off my needle tip now, and I'm going to skip the second stitch and move on to the third, and I'm going to insert my needle into that purlwise. Now I'm going to return my attention to, this was the second stitch on the needle. I'm now ready to go purlwise into that. So if you can start to see the pattern already, the stitches, so the first stitch and every other one after that, we're treating as our knit stitches. First we prep it by going purlwise, and then we finish it by going knitwise. The other stitches, so that would be stitches 2, 4, 6, etc., we prep by going knitwise, and we finish them by going purlwise. So the way I think of it is, however I need it to finish, however I want it to look at the end, I need to prep it by doing the opposite motion. So if I want it to end up as a purl stitch, like I do now for this one, I first prepped it by inserting my needle knitwise. And now I'm going to finish it purlwise, skip this stitch, and prep this stitch knitwise. Got my little needle there. I apologize for the dark yarn. This is a new sweater design and finishing. All right, so I am ready to finish this knit stitch. So I insert knitwise, and it can come off the needle, and I'm going to skip a stitch and prep my next knit stitch with a purl insert of my needle. You can see how it gives such a nice tidy finish. So I'm back to a purl stitch, which I'm ready to finish. So I go purlwise, and then I skip a stitch and prep this next one knitwise. That was the easiest way for me to memorize Kitchener stitch. Hopefully it helps you too. So I'm ready to finish my knit, and then prep my next knit by skipping a stitch and inserting purlwise into this one. We go. Finish my purl, skip a stitch, prep, knitwise. So what most Kitchener tutorials would have you do is actually put all of the knit stitches onto one needle, and then you would use a spare needle for all your purl stitches, and you would go back and forth in between the two. But especially if you have a lot of stitches you have to Kitchener bind off, it's really nice to be able to skip that step because it just makes it a little quicker. And then let's say you have to set it down, attend to something, it's all just right on your one needle for you. You can tuck it back into your knitting bag or whatever you need to do till you're ready to finish it. So I am back to a knit stitch, which I need to finish. Boink, skip a stitch, prep this one purlwise. Okay, finish this purl, skip a stitch, prep knitwise. You can also think of it as whatever motion you just did last is what you're going to do next. So I prepped that second stitch knitwise. That means I'm ready to finish this one knitwise. And then purl, and then I'm going to purl, knit, knit, purl, purl, knit. So that's kind of your rhythm, if that's helpful too. But that's it. We're just going to keep going across till all of our stitches are bound off. I do have an odd number of stitches here, so I'll simply just run this through my last knit stitch knitwise and then break my yarn and weave in my ends. I hope you found this helpful. Happy knitting.